Hello, and welcome to Lean Communication for Sales. My name is Jack Malcolm, and my mission is to make you more productive by improving the way you communicate with your customers. Now, before we begin, let me just take a few moments so that I can tell you about my background, so that I can tell you what qualifies me to bring these ideas to you. I've been in the sales training business for 25 years, 20 years with my own business, specializing in teaching sales professionals how to succeed in complex B2B sales. Starting about 10 years ago, based on demand from some of my customers, I also started working with senior level people to help them improve the effectiveness and the persuasiveness of their communication skills. And this course is a melding of both the sales side and a communication side to help you apply the principles of lean thinking to the process of communicating with your customers, hence lean communication for sales. Now, let me begin with a call to action. My ask of you is to embrace the mindset and practices of lean communication for sales. I'd like you to embrace the mindset immediately, and you probably already have, or you probably wouldn't be taking this course. The second one is embracing the practices. That's not something you're going to be able to embrace immediately. These are skills that require practice and over time can be improved on. So hopefully over time you will also embrace the practices and the habits of lean communication. Why should you go to all this trouble? This will help you to become a much more valuable and influential contributor to your customers, your company, and most important of all, from your point of view, to yourself. So let's see why lean communication is important and how it can help you. We'll start by figuring out your purpose for existing in the actual sales process. Now, what are you good for? There's probably a lot of different answers depending on whose perspective you take, but the perspective that matters the most, of course, is the perspective of your customer. And to your customer, the only reason you exist in a buying process is to provide them useful information that they can use to make effective buying decisions. So how well are salespeople doing at this? It's kind of a good news, bad news scenario. The bad news is that a lot of buyers see salespeople as an annoyance. In fact, some research shows that the average B2B buyer is about 60% or more of the way through their buying process, gathering information, comparing alternatives, etc., before they even contact a salesperson. And that's because the balance of power has shifted over recent years. It used to be that when a buyer needed information on products or services, they had to speak to salespeople because that was the only source they had available. Now, of course, the internet has oceans of information at their fingertips, which is why if they can avoid speaking to salespeople for as long as possible, they're going to do that. That said, there's some good news on the other side of the table. According to other research, showed that the sales experience accounted for 53% of the total reasons for a customer being loyal to an organization, more than company and brand impact, product and service delivery, and value to price ratio combined. So salespeople are still extremely important, even though buyers have so much information available to them. And that's because the very existence of so much information means that there's too much choice, there's too much complexity, and the buyer is trying to process all of this information age stuff with a Stone Age brain. We still, as buyers, if you're a buyer, you still do not have enough time and attention to devote to figuring out what is the most effective buying decision. So a salesperson who can help them make that buying decision, help them cut through the complexity and simplify their choices is going to be hugely valuable. And in fact, that word valuable, I'd like to change that a little bit and call it valuable, because it truly is a set of capabilities that you bring to the table. The first capability is that is furnished by your company, your product, your services, and all the resources behind you. There's not a lot that you can do about that, so let's focus on the next two, connection and communication. Connection is the ability to connect your company capabilities to measurable business improvements for your customers. And communication, of course, is communicating it in such a way that the customer is getting the information they need without having a lot of clutter, a lot of waste, and a lot of fluff. And the solution, of course, is lean communication for sales. So let's get right into it and figure out what lean communication is all about. Lean communication is based on the principles of lean manufacturing, which is all about delivering maximum value to customers with minimum waste. As I started working on these principles, it occurred to me that the process of communication is just like a manufacturing process. You take in inputs, apply certain work to it in order to produce outputs that a customer values. So if we look at the process of communication, we want to supply maximum value with minimum waste. So that brings up the question, what is value? Value is useful information, and that word useful will make much more sense a little bit later, that improves personal and or business outcomes while preserving the relationship. Both the relationship and the outcomes are important, but as you can see by the slide here, the outcomes have to come first. So you as a salesperson sometimes have to do or say some things that the buyer might not totally want to hear or might not totally like, but if it improves their outcomes, that has to come first. So then that brings up the question, what is waste? And this is a really simple definition. It's any work or input that does not directly contribute to value. So stepping back for a second, why do we need communication at all? As we said, buyers are looking to make effective decisions. So from the minute that you walk into their door, or maybe that they open an email from you, or they start listening to a presentation that you need to give, they are there and they are paying attention to you for a reason, and you are there for a reason. The reason is to take them from status quo to improve their outcomes in such a way that the future will be better than it is right now. Otherwise, why would they need you? So you need communication in order to give them useful information, information that they can use to make decisions and to influence their decisions so that they can drive actions which leads to those outcomes. And of course, the actions that you're looking to drive as a salesperson are them buying your product, signing up for your service, and becoming and remaining a customer. So communication is absolutely the tool that we as salespeople need to do that. So where does communication go wrong? This is really interesting. It was said by an Austrian philosopher by the name of Konrad Lorenz, and I think it applies so well to what happens. And as I go through these 7 steps, keep in mind that I'm looking at both sides of the equation. Yourself and the customer can be guilty of some of these. A lot of times what is thought is not said. Customer may not be totally open with you. Salespeople sometimes aren't totally open with customers, and I'm sure that won't surprise you. What is said is not heard. Customers not listening. You're trying to make a cold call, for example. They don't hear you because they're just not paying attention. Their attention has not been grabbed in some way. They hear you, but they don't understand you, and vice versa. A lot of times customers complain that they tell us exactly what they need in order to make decisions, and salespeople don't understand what they're saying. What is understood is not believed, and no surprise there either. Some people are very distrustful of customers. Some customers are very distrustful of salespeople. What is believed is not advocated. I'm sure you've had the experience of meeting with a customer, getting them to buy into what you're saying, but then they don't go around internally and champion that for you, and you've lost a valuable opportunity. The 6th one, what is advocated is not yet acted on, is something that salespeople complain about all the time. Yeah, it seems like a good idea. The buyer is all in favor of it, but the deal just keeps hanging and hanging and hanging, just gets stuck in that funnel because it hasn't been acted on. And then finally, what's acted on may not be completed. Customer buys, but it also needs to be implemented properly so that they are happy over time. So when you look at these 7 steps, there are a lot of potential gaps where communication can go wrong. And basically, so what? What does that mean to you? Well, the obvious costs are time, errors, and frustration. Sales cycles that take too long, a lot of wasted time, a lot of errors where there's miscommunications, and frustration, unfortunately, on both sides. The non-obvious are that when the customer is rushed into making a decision, sometimes when they haven't been communicated with or don't have enough useful information, they apply shallow thinking to it, and of course the end result is the poor results. The end result, when you do everything right, is to increase your customer's return on time and effort. Think of it this way. Wouldn't it be ideal if your customer would pay to meet with you? Now, that's probably not realistic, but in a sense, your customer does pay to meet with you. They take time and they take a lot of effort to process the information that you're getting across to them. So you want to give them as high a return as possible on that. In other words, you want to increase value while reducing waste. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. Here's the agenda. I try to make things as simple as possible, and as they say, ABC, you can't get much simpler than that. Unfortunately, I can't get quite that simple, but I can make it A, B, C, and D. The A stands for add value. Value has to come first. If you're not delivering value to your customers, it doesn't matter how brief or clear you are. But value comes first, then we have to do it briefly. Brevity, we're going to show you how to be brief and get your message across and reduce the customer's investment in time to understand you. And at the same time, we're going to reduce their effort to understand you and make sure that there are no misunderstandings or errors by looking at the C, which is clarity. Finally, no matter how valuable your message is and how brief and how clear it is, it's never going to be exactly right because every customer is different and every customer has their idea of what's important to them. So we're going to use dialogue and we're going to encourage dialogue to co-create value along with our customers. So we're going to take you through each of those sections individually, beginning with add value. Here's just a quick look at how the ABCD relates to lean principles. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these because they're going to be folded into everything that we talk about. But 5 lean principles that are going to be interwoven through this for those of you who are lean purists. We begin with value, of course. Then we organize our work in such a way that we can make it as effective and as efficient as possible. We identify waste and cut out as much waste as possible. We make our work visible not only to ourselves but to our customers as well, so that it's much easier to identify issues for improvement and to follow along. And then finally, we use the pull system where we are delivering exactly what the customer needs just when they need it. And that ties into adding value, brevity, clarity, and dialogue.